The California sun burned high above Naval Base, its golden light glinting off the steel hulls of anchored ships and the long stretch of asphalt leading to the barracks. The morning was routine, boots pounding in cadence, whistles echoing, the smell of jet fuel and sea salt heavy in the air. Recruits were already halfway through drills when a black government sedan pulled up near the administration building. From it stepped a woman in plain khaki fatigues, her sleeves neatly rolled, no insignia visible. She carried only one duffel bag. Her hair, tied into a no-nonsense bun, shimmered auburn in the light. To anyone watching, she was just another new arrival, perhaps a clerk, maybe a civilian contractor. Her name on the base register read E. Brooks, though few bothered to look that closely. The watch officer gave her a perfunctory nod and directed her toward temporary quarters. No salutes, no attention. She walked quietly across the yard, eyes scanning everything, the troop formations, the maintenance crews, even the idle chatter near the mess hall. She moved with that unmistakable composure of someone who'd spent decades in uniform, but none of the young recruits noticed. They were too busy joking, too eager to test the new girl. Inside the mess hall, lunchtime chaos was in full swing, clattering trays, the sharp scent of coffee and laughter echoing off metal tables. When Brooks stepped in, the room stilled just slightly, then returned to its rhythm. She took a tray, served herself scrambled eggs and toast, and sat at the far end alone. That was enough to catch attention. At the next table, a group of Navy trainees exchanged glances. "Who's that?" one whispered. "New admin chick, probably," another replied. "Looks too serious for HR, though." "Maybe she's lost," a third added, smirking. They were loud enough for her to hear, but she didn't react. Instead, she stirred her coffee and glanced briefly toward the window. The silence on her table unsettled them more than any comeback would have. Then came the spark. One of the recruits, a tall, broad-shouldered kid named Tanner, swaggered over holding a steaming cup of coffee. "Hey there, new girl," he said. "Welcome to, hope you like Navy brew, it's strong enough to clean engines." She looked up, calm but unreadable. "Is that so?" Tanner grinned and accidentally tipped his cup forward, spilling coffee over the toe of her boots. His buddies snickered. The room went quieter than usual, eyes darting between them. She didn't move at first. Then, without a word, she reached for a napkin, bent down, and cleaned the boot slowly, methodically. When she stood, she met his eyes squarely. "You're right," she said softly. "Strong stuff. You should try drinking it instead of wasting it." Tanner blinked, unsure how to respond. There was something about her tone, calm, not angry, but commanding in a way that made the laughter around him falter. He muttered something and backed away. She finished her meal in silence, stood, and left without another word. The recruits watched her go, unease replacing arrogance. One of them exhaled. Who the hell was that? Tanner forced a laugh. "Just some admin lady. She'll be gone by next week." But outside the mess hall, Brooks paused for a moment on the steps. Her gaze swept the base again, the helicopters lined in formation, the rows of recruits running laps, the officers shouting cadence. A small smile tugged at her lips. No one knew that the woman they just mocked was Rear Admiral Brooks, newly assigned commanding officer of the entire base. Her orders had been clear: arrive unannounced, assess morale, and observe leadership integrity from the ground up. And in less than an hour, she'd seen plenty. She made a mental note of every face she'd encountered, especially Tanner. Not for punishment, but for something far more meaningful: evaluation. Walking back toward the administrative wing, she felt that familiar surge of quiet satisfaction. Her late father, a Navy legend himself, had always said, "If you want to understand a team, meet them before they know you lead them." Admiral Brooks was doing exactly that. And before the week was over, those recruits would learn that lesson in a way they'd never forget. The next morning, woke to the familiar sound of whistles and shouting. The Pacific air was brisk, the horizon bright with the glow of sunrise. Recruits assembled on the training field, sweat already glistening on their brows as the instructors barked orders. Among them, unnoticed at first, stood Brooks, still dressed in the same plain fatigues, blending effortlessly with the crowd. She requested to observe the morning exercises under the guise of an administrative audit. The officers agreed, assuming she was some headquarters bureaucrat. But to the recruits, she was still the mysterious new girl who'd made Tanner look foolish in the mess hall. They weren't going to let that go untested. When Sergeant announced rope climbs, the recruits exchanged sly grins. Tanner muttered, "Hey, maybe the new girl wants to show us how it's done." The sergeant looked up. "You volunteering her, Tanner?" Brooks' voice came steady and clear. "I'll do it." Her tone caught even the sergeant off guard. There was no hesitation in it, no bravado either, just quiet certainty. A few recruits snickered. "It's 20 feet, one said mockingly. "Don't look down." Brooks approached the rope, her expression calm. She glanced up once, then flexed her hands. Years of SEAL collaboration, field conditioning, and early command training came back like muscle memory. She took hold of the rope, and in a single, fluid motion began climbing. 10 seconds later, she reached the top. No wasted movement, no falter, no pause. She tapped the beam overhead, looked down, and descended with the same precision. When her boots hit the dirt, silence swallowed the field. The sergeant stared, dumbfounded. That's faster than anyone's done it this month." Brooks brushed her palms on her fatigues and nodded once. "Good rope," she said, then stepped aside. Tanner's jaw tightened. "Lucky jump start," he muttered, grabbing the rope. He started climbing fast at first, but by halfway up his grip slipped. The rope burned his palms and he fell back, landing hard. The laughter that followed wasn't kind. Brooks knelt beside him, offering her hand. "Grip from your core next time," she said softly. "Not your pride." He blinked at her, confused. The way she said it wasn't mocking. It was instruction, real instruction. By noon, word of the rope climb had spread. Recruits were whispering in the chow line. "She beat the field record," one said, "without breaking a sweat." "She's not just admin," another replied. "Nobody climbs like that unless they've trained serious." The sergeant, curiosity piqued, approached her after drills. "Ma'am, miss," he corrected quickly, not knowing her rank. "Where'd you learn that technique?" She met his gaze, unreadable. Years of watching others make the same mistakes. He chuckled awkwardly, unsure how to respond. Later that day, while others rested, Brooks walked alone by the docks. She paused near a moored ship, watching the reflection of the water ripple against its hull. The base was beautiful from that angle, alive, disciplined, and proud. But beneath the surface she saw cracks, arrogance, complacency, the slow decay of respect. She pulled a small notepad from her pocket and scribbled a line. "Leadership check, a field morale assessment ongoing." Behind her, Tanner appeared again, still rubbing his palms raw from rope burns. "Hey," he said quietly, the edge in his voice gone. "About this morning." Brooks turned, waiting. He shifted awkwardly. "You're not like the others, you don't talk like one of us. Who are you, really?" She smiled faintly. "Someone who believes you can be better than you think you are." Before he could ask more, the sergeant's whistle blared, summoning them back to formation. She walked away without another word, leaving him standing there with questions and a flicker of humility he'd never felt before. That evening, as the sun dipped low, several officers reviewed the day's reports. One lieutenant frowned at a note on his desk. "Unregistered personnel outperforming recruits, claims record time on obstacle test," he sighed. "Who authorized this, E. Brooks?" No one had an answer. But somewhere, deep in the command building, Admiral Brooks' official orders sat in a sealed folder, stamped classified until review. And tomorrow, the base would learn that their quiet new girl wasn't done testing them yet. The real challenge was only beginning. By midweek, Naval Base was alive with whispers. It started small murmurs in the mess hall, fragments exchanged during weapon maintenance, cautious glances whenever Brooks walked by. Nobody knew who she really was, and the uncertainty gnawed at them. "She's not listed on any roster," a Marine named muttered to his bunkmate. "I checked the admin board, no Brooks anywhere." "Maybe she's special ops," the other whispered back. "CIA maybe." "Then why would she eat with us? Why climb ropes in fatigues with no patch?" Every answer led to more questions. Even Sargent began to feel uneasy. He trained hundreds of recruits, but never had someone so quiet commanded such attention. Brooks didn't speak unless necessary. She observed, watched, listened. It was as if she was studying the base itself. That morning she appeared at the shooting range. The instructors exchanged looks. Nobody had invited her, yet she walked up to the farthest lane, methodically unrolled a cleaning kit and began assembling a standard M4 rifle. Her movements were clean, exact, like muscle memory. "Ma'am, this area's for qualified shooters only," an instructor began politely. She didn't respond. Instead, she slipped on ear protection, checked the weapon, and fired. 10 rounds, 10 hits, dead center. The group fell silent. She cleared the chamber, set the rifle down, and turned to the instructor. "You should check your rear sight alignment," she said. "It's off by a hair." He blinked. You noticed that while shooting." "I noticed before shooting," she replied, her tone neutral. When she left, every man and woman on that range stood frozen, watching her retreating figure. Within an hour, the rumors exploded. "She's a sniper," someone claimed. "No, she's probably ex-Black Ops. I heard she trained SEALs. No way, she's too calm for that." By lunchtime, the mess hall was a buzzing hive. Tanner sat among them, still nursing the bruises to his pride. "You're all guessing wrong," he said. "I looked through admin this morning. There's a Brooks listed on the incoming chain, but her title's redacted." "Redacted," repeated. "What's that mean?" Tanner hesitated, then leaned forward. "It means someone higher than command doesn't want us to know who she is." The words hit like a depth charge. Conversation stopped mid-bite. That afternoon, Brooks returned to the field, this time watching from the sidelines. She took notes as the recruits ran obstacle courses, shouted encouragement, stumbled, recovered. Her expression stayed composed, but every now and then her gaze lingered on those who led with arrogance instead of teamwork. She saw more than physical performance. She saw attitude, morale, and cohesion. At one point, a medic jogged past and nearly tripped. She steadied him without hesitation. "Hydrate," she said firmly. The young man nodded, startled by her authority. When she left, one recruit noticed something sticking out of her pocket, a folded Navy cap. On it, just barely visible before she tucked it away, was the Admiral's gold insignia. He froze, his mouth went dry. "Oh my God," he whispered. By nightfall, half the barracks had heard, the other half didn't believe it. "An admiral," Tanner said. "No way, admirals don't sleep in standard quarters. They don't eat with recruits. That's insane." "Maybe it's a test," said, lowering his voice. "A leadership evaluation. My cousin told me the Navy's doing that now." Tanner stared at the floor, uneasy. A test. That would explain everything, the way she moved, the way the sergeant treated her with nervous respect since the rope climb. That night Brooks sat alone in her quarters. The room was dim, quiet except for the faint hum of a desk lamp. She opened her notepad again, writing in tight, deliberate script. Morale fluctuating. Leadership shows signs of complacency. Team cohesion weak in lower ranks. Trust through humility still lacking. She paused, then underlined one phrase. Potential strong but buried under ego. Closing the notebook, she looked out the small window toward the training field. In the moonlight, she could see a few late-night runners finishing laps, determined not to fall behind. A faint smile touched her lips. She didn't need to reveal herself yet. They were learning faster this way, through curiosity, discomfort, and doubt. And soon, when the truth surfaced, those same recruits would realize how close they'd been standing to authority and how little they'd truly understood it. The storm of realization was building, and Admiral Brooks was ready for it. By Thursday morning, the tension around Naval Base could have been cut with a knife. Recruits whispered less now, but their eyes followed Brooks everywhere she went. Rumors had twisted into near legends. Some said she was an undercover inspector. Others claimed she was a retired operative brought back for evaluation. No one dared ask her directly, except one. Tanner. His pride hadn't recovered since the rope climb incident. Every time someone mentioned the new girl, he could feel the sting of humiliation all over again. But when he overheard the latest rumor, that she might be an admiral, something in him snapped. An admiral doesn't eat mystery meat in the mess hall, he muttered too. She's playing games with us. The opportunity came during endurance drills that afternoon. The recruits were halfway through a brutal circuit under the scorching sun. Brooks stood near the edge of the field, observing with her clipboard. She wasn't barking orders, but her mere presence pushed the recruits to perform better. When the sergeant called a water break, Tanner wiped the sweat from his face and stormed toward her. "Hey," he called out, his tone sharp. "You've been walking around here like you own the place. Why don't you tell us who you really are?" The field went silent. Even the sergeant froze. Brooks turned slowly. "Excuse me." Tanner's voice rose. "You heard me. You show up out of nowhere, no rank, no ID, and suddenly everyone's afraid of you. What's your deal? Some kind of spy?" A few recruits tried to pull him back. "Tanner, let it go," one hissed. But he shrugged them off. "No, I'm serious. If she's supposed to be part of this unit, she should prove it. Otherwise, she's just another outsider sticking her nose where it doesn't belong." Brooks' face remained calm, unreadable. She set down her clipboard and stepped closer until they were face to face. "You want proof?" she asked quietly. Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of command, the kind that demanded silence without shouting. Even the sergeant stood at attention instinctively. Tanner crossed his arms. "Yeah, prove it." Without warning, Brooks moved. In 2 smooth steps, she grabbed his wrist, twisted it lightly, not enough to hurt, but enough to show control, and swept his legs with surgical precision. Tanner hit the dirt before he even processed what had happened. Gasps rippled through the ranks. Brooks released him immediately, offering a hand to help him up. "Lesson 1, she said evenly. "Respect isn't given, it's earned. And you earn it by how you carry yourself, especially when you think no one's watching." Tanner stared up at her, breathing hard, his pride shattered for the second time. This time, though, he took her hand. When he stood, she added, "And lesson 2, never challenge someone before you understand what they've survived." She turned to the others. "Break over back to formation." No one moved for a second. Then slowly, every recruit fell back into line. Even Sergeant looked at her differently, like a puzzle piece had just clicked into place. Training resumed, but the energy was different. Every shout, every movement carried a subtle tension of respect. No one dared make a joke now. Later that evening, Tanner knocked on the door of the admin quarters. "Come in," Brooks said without looking up. He entered, shoulders stiff. "Ma'am, miss, about earlier." She raised her eyes. "You were out of line, but you learned something from it. That's what matters." He hesitated. "You could have me thrown off base." Brooks shook her head. "That's not leadership. My job isn't to break you, it's to make sure you never break under pressure." He frowned. "You keep saying my job. What exactly is your job?" She smiled faintly. "You'll find out soon enough." When he left, he felt an unfamiliar emotion brewing inside him, respect mixed with regret. Outside, the base lights shimmered across the ocean. In the command office, a sealed envelope marked "Confidential, Admiral EVELYNBROOKS." Command Review Initiative sat unopened on the commander's desk. By sunrise, its contents would be revealed, and when they were, Every man and woman on that base would realize the truth. The new girl didn't just own the place. She commanded it. By dawn the next day, the rumor had spread like wildfire. Every corner of Naval Base buzzed with one name, Brooks. No one said her first name, as if speaking it aloud might summon her. The story changed with every retelling. Some said she'd been sent by the Pentagon. Others claimed she was a war hero who'd come to audit the base's discipline. A few whispered something even wilder, that she outranked the commander himself. By noon, that whisper became reality. In the command building, Captain Lawrence, the base commander, sat in his office reviewing a thick envelope marked confidential. He'd received it from the Navy Department at sunrise. The contents made his jaw tighten. The orders were direct. Effective immediately, Rear Admiral Brooks is to assume command of Naval Base. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. "She's been here all week," he muttered, "and no one told me." His aide shrugged nervously. "Sir, it seems that was the point." Minutes later, the intercom buzzed. "Sir, Admiral Brooks is on her way to your office." Lawrence stood quickly, straightening his uniform. When she entered, still dressed in her plain fatigues, he snapped to attention. "Admiral on deck." Every officer nearby froze, eyes wide. The recruits walking past the glass walls turned pale. The woman they'd mocked, doubted, and underestimated had just been saluted by their commanding officer. Brooks gave a small nod. "At ease, Captain. No need for ceremony today." Her voice was calm, but her presence filled the room. "I wanted to see how my people treat those they don't recognize," she said. "I've seen enough." Captain Lawrence swallowed. "Permission to speak freely, ma'am." "Granted. You walked in here with no insignia, no notice. You trained with the recruits, ate with them, lived among them. Why?" Brooks folded her arms. "Because leadership doesn't start at the top, it starts on the ground. If they'll only respect the stripes, they'll never respect the mission." Outside, the recruits had gathered in quiet clusters, watching through the windows. Tanner stood among them, silent. His throat felt dry. He remembered the way she'd looked at him during training, not angry but expectant. Now, every word she'd said made perfect sense. Captain Lawrence turned to the recruits lingering near the door. "All personnel, assemble in the parade yard, now." 15 minutes later, the entire base stood in formation under the blazing California sun. Brooks stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back. For the first time, her rank insignia gleamed on her collar, twin silver stars. The crowd fell dead silent. "I know some of you have questions," she began, her voice carrying across the yard without a microphone. "About who I am, why I came here, and what this week was about." She paused, scanning their faces. "You judged me by what you saw. You assumed my worth from what I wore. That's natural. But the Navy doesn't run on assumptions. It runs on integrity, respect, and unity." Tanner lowered his gaze, shifted uncomfortably beside him. "When I arrived," Brooks continued, "I wasn't looking for perfection. I was looking for character, and I found it even in those who stumbled first." Her eyes found Tanner for a brief moment. He stood at attention, spine straight, trying not to flinch under her gaze. "From this day forward," she said, "we build on what we've learned. Rank matters, but humanity matters more. You'll remember that long after I'm gone." The words hit deeper than any reprimand. Some recruits looked ashamed, others looked inspired. Then, breaking the silence, Captain Lawrence stepped beside her. "Recruits," he said, "you now serve directly under Rear Admiral Brooks, commanding officer of Naval Base." Salutes snapped through the air in perfect unison. Brooks returned the gesture, her expression unreadable. But inside, she felt something shift, pride, not for herself but for them. The test was over, yet the real work was just beginning. When the formation dismissed, Tanner approached her. "Admiral," he said quietly, "I didn't know." She met his eyes. "Now you do. Remember what it felt like to underestimate someone and make sure you never do it again." He nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am." As the sun dipped low over the Pacific, Admiral Brooks turned toward the horizon. The sea breeze carried the faint echo of marching feet and new discipline. They had learned her rank, but more importantly, they had learned why she wore it. The next morning, the base felt different. It wasn't the weather or the drills, it was the atmosphere. A quiet respect hung over everything. Recruits moved with sharper precision, instructors watched their tone, and even the most cynical officers kept their words measured. The new girl they'd mocked had become the admiral who now commanded them all. Admiral Brooks stood at the edge of the parade yard, arms folded, watching the recruits stretch before their morning run. The sun had barely risen, but her presence had already stirred the base into full motion. She traded her plain fatigues for her full uniform, and the silver stars on her collar caught the light like small fires. Captain Lawrence approached cautiously. "Admiral, morale's elevated," he said. "The recruits have never trained this hard. I think they're trying to make up for how they treated you." Brooks gave a slight smile. "Good, but guilt fades fast, discipline doesn't." She turned to him. "I'm not here to punish anyone, Captain. I'm here to rebuild this place from the inside out." She wasn't exaggerating. By mid-morning, she'd already started her assessment tour. The infirmary came first. She spoke with medics about supply shortages and response times. Then the maintenance bay, where she rolled up her sleeves and helped a mechanic inspect an engine, surprising everyone. At every stop, she listened more than she talked, her questions simple but cutting. "What slows you down? What do you need that you're afraid to ask for?" Word spread fast. The Admiral didn't sit behind her desk. She moved. Meanwhile, the recruits faced a new kind of challenge. Admiral Brooks had ordered a revised training program, less about brute strength, more about leadership and unity. "Every team fails until every member succeeds," she told them during orientation. "If one of you falls behind, the rest of you haven't done your job." That afternoon, under a scorching sun, the recruits faced an obstacle course unlike any before. It was grueling: mud pits, high walls, rope bridges. But now teamwork was mandatory. A single recruit couldn't finish alone. Tanner, still feeling the sting of his earlier arrogance, pushed himself harder than anyone. When slipped in the mud, Tanner doubled back to pull him up. "Come on," he grunted. "We finish together." Brooks watched from a distance, expression unreadable. Captain Lawrence stood beside her. "They're different now," he said quietly. She nodded. Pain teaches fast, but understanding lasts longer. By the time the last group crossed the finish line, every recruit was drenched, exhausted, and most importantly, united. For the first time all week, laughter rang out across the field, not mockery but camaraderie. That evening, Brooks gathered them in the mess hall. She didn't stand behind a podium, she stood among them. "You all learned something this week," she said. "About leadership, about pride, about perception." She glanced around, meeting each gaze. "I didn't come here to expose your weaknesses. I came to remind you of your strength. Every one of you was chosen because someone believed you could lead someday. Start earning that belief today." Silence. Then slowly applause broke out. It wasn't loud at first, but it grew authentic, full of respect. After the meeting, Tanner lingered behind. "Admiral," he said, voice low, "I deserved every lesson you gave me. Thank you for not giving up on us." Brooks smiled faintly. "You've got potential, Tanner, but remember, leadership isn't about standing tallest. It's about kneeling first when someone falls." He nodded firmly. "Understood, ma'am." When he left, Brooks turned back toward the empty hall. For the first time in years, she felt the flicker of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time: hope. She made a note in her logbook that night. Phase 1 complete, morale restored, respect earned, leadership potential emerging. Outside, the waves crashed softly against the shore. The base had begun to change, not through orders, but through example. And Admiral Brooks knew that transformation born of humility was the kind that endured. Tomorrow she'd begin the next phase, testing not their bodies but their character. The reckoning wasn't over. It had only just begun. A week had passed since Admiral Brooks revealed who she was. The base no longer buzzed with gossip but with purpose. Every corridor echoed with focus, and every recruit carried themselves differently, no longer as individuals but as a unit. Yet Brooks knew respect earned through shock could fade fast if not nurtured. It was time for the next step, shaping leaders. At dawn, she called a meeting in the strategy hall. The recruits arrived expecting another drill. Instead, they found the Admiral standing before a giant tactical board covered in maps and coded symbols. "Today," she began, "you'll learn what separates a fighter from a leader." The room went still. She pointed to a red marker on the map. "A convoy has gone missing during a supply run. You have 1 hour to plan a rescue using the resources you see here." She gestured to crates filled with field gear, radio sets, and mock mission files. "This isn't physical training. It's about judgment, coordination, and trust. Fail to work as one and you fail the mission." She divided the recruits into 4 teams, each led by one of the men who'd once mocked her. Tanner's team drew the most difficult route, through rough terrain with multiple enemy zones. He swallowed hard, but his eyes showed determination. "Remember," Brooks said quietly as she passed him, "don't command, guide." For the next hour, chaos reigned. Teams argued, planned, adjusted. Brooks moved among them silently, watching how they handled pressure. Some tried to dominate discussions, others hesitated. Tanner's group, however, began to find balance. He listened more than he spoke, weighed input, and made decisions based on consensus. When time ran out, each team presented their mission plan. Some were efficient but coldly tactical. Tanner stood out. It emphasized protecting the convoy crew first, even if it meant risk to their own. Brooks nodded once. "That," she said, "is the foundation of real command. Leadership isn't about who survives, it's about who you refuse to leave behind." The recruits absorbed her words silently. Then came the unexpected twist. Brooks announced, "Simulation begins now." Without warning, alarms blared. Sirens echoed. Red lights flashed. Every team had to execute their mission live through the base's training grounds, rigged with traps, smoke, and enemy patrols. The recruits scrambled, adrenaline flooding their veins. Tanner took charge. "Team 2, flank left, keep your radios open." His voice carried authority, not ego. When one recruit stumbled under a mock explosion, Tanner doubled back, helping him to his feet. "You move when I move. Nobody gets left." From the command tower, Brooks watched with Captain Lawrence. "He's learning fast," the captain said. Brooks smiled slightly, "because he stopped trying to impress me." After an hour of sweat, shouts, and mud, Tanner's team completed the mission first. They'd rescued the convoy, avoided major losses, and even improvised when their radio failed. When they reached the finish line, Brooks was waiting. "Well done," she said, her tone calm but approving. "You didn't follow orders, you understood them." Tanner, chest heaving, managed a grin. "Thank you, Admiral. Guess I finally stopped thinking like a rookie." "Don't thank me," she replied. "Thank your mistakes, they're the best teachers you'll ever have." That night, as the base settled into quiet, Brooks reviewed the day's performance logs. Many had improved, but it was Tanner who caught her attention most. His growth reflected the change she hoped to inspire across the base, a transformation from arrogance to accountability. Later, she walked the dimly lit docks, looking out at the ocean. Captain Lawrence joined her. "You've rebuilt more than morale," he said softly. "You've rebuilt faith." Brooks looked at the horizon. "Faith isn't rebuilt," she said. "It's earned, one action at a time." Behind her, the recruits rested, unaware that their training had shifted into something deeper. Tomorrow's drills wouldn't just test strategy, they'd test loyalty. For Admiral Brooks, leadership was never about medals or stars. It was about leaving something stronger behind than what you found. And tonight, watching the reflection of the moon ripple over the water, she knew her recruits were finally becoming what they were meant to be. A team that led not through rank, but through respect. 2 months later, the base had transformed. What was once just another training installation now pulsed with precision, unity, and pride. Admiral Brooks had done what many thought impossible. She turned a fractured, undisciplined group into a team that understood leadership as service, not status. But real growth, she knew, wasn't proven by drills or speeches. It was revealed in chaos. That moment came on a stormy Friday night. Rain slammed against the coast, thunder rumbling over the airfield. The recruits were in their quarters when the alarm blared, a real one this time, not a drill. Over the loudspeakers came a voice, tense and urgent. Emergency. Coast Guard transport down 5 miles offshore. All available personnel prepare for rescue operations. Within minutes, the base came alive. Lights flickered across the docks as rescue boats roared to life. Brooks, already in her rain gear, moved through the storm with calm command. Teams Alpha and Bravo, launch immediately, she ordered. Tanner, you're with me. Yes, ma'am, Tanner shouted, his voice barely cutting through the wind. The waves were brutal, 10 feet high and rising. Visibility was near zero, but Brooks refused hesitation. The Coast Guard signal beacon flickered weakly on the radar. Somewhere out there, people were clinging to survival. As they sped through the roaring sea, Tanner gripped the edge of the boat. Ma'am, he yelled, we might capsize if the storm worsens. Brooks's eyes stayed fixed on the black water ahead. Then we hold steady. They're counting on us. Moments later, the beam of a floodlight cut through the mist. An overturned transport, half sunk, waves crashing against it. Several figures clung to its hull, one waving frantically. Helm steady, Brooks commanded. Ropes ready. Tanner and the others moved with precision. They'd trained for this, only now it wasn't a simulation. Tanner tied off his line and leapt into the freezing surf, fighting the current as he reached the first survivor. I've got you, he shouted, pulling the man toward the boat. Brooks followed, securing another rope around a dazed officer. Together, they hoisted each survivor aboard, one by one, as lightning split the sky above them. 2 more, Tanner yelled. Then came a massive wave slamming into the side of the boat. Tanner lost his footing, the rope slipping from his hand. Before he could react, Brooks lunged forward, grabbing his vest. Hold on, she barked. Together they braced as the wave passed, coughing and soaked, but still alive. Minutes later, the final survivor was aboard. Brooks gave the signal, and the rescue craft turned back toward the base. The storm raged, but the mission was complete. When they returned to the docks, medics rushed to assist the rescued crew. Brooks climbed off the boat, her uniform drenched, her face streaked with rain. Tanner followed, exhausted but smiling. Everyone made it, he said breathlessly. Not one loss. Brooks met his gaze. That's what leadership looks like, Tanner. You didn't wait for orders, you acted for others. By dawn, the storm had cleared. The rescued Coast Guard officers, now safe, personally thanked the recruits for saving their lives. Word spread across the naval network by morning. The base under Admiral Brooks had executed a flawless rescue under impossible conditions. Later that day, the recruits stood assembled in the courtyard. The air was crisp, the flag snapping in the wind. Admiral Brooks addressed them one last time. When I arrived here, I saw potential buried under pride, she said. Now I see leaders, men and women who understand that true strength is in service. She paused, scanning their faces. You are the future of this Navy. Lead with humility, protect with honor, and remember, leadership isn't about being seen. It's about what you do when no one's watching. The courtyard was silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. Some recruits even had tears in their eyes. As the crowd dispersed, Tanner approached her. Admiral, he said quietly, if you hadn't come here, none of this would happen. Brooks smiled softly. You're wrong, Tanner. It happened because you chose to change. That night she stood once more at the edge of the pier, watching the moon shimmer over calm waters. The storm had passed, outside and within the base. Her mission was complete. The new generation of leaders no longer needed to be told what to do. They knew. And as the wind carried the faint sound of laughter and drilled chants across the shore, Admiral Brooks allowed herself a rare smile. Her legacy wasn't the rank on her collar. It was the strength she'd left behind. The end.